My Lords, it's extremely difficult to rise to speak after two such very powerful speeches. The noble Lord Woodley has advanced again the resentencing option, which was, of course, originally proposed by the Justice Select Committee in the other place under the chairmanship of Sir Bob Neill when he was a Member of Parliament, on a unanimous cross-party basis, and therefore cannot be dismissed as some sort of reckless and trivial proposal. It's a proposal that should be taken with great seriousness. But I'm not going to elaborate further on it now, because, of course, the noble Lord has had a private member. It has been debated already. The noble Lord has a private member's bill which is still extant, which would give it effect. But the proposal from the noble and learned Lord Thomas of Cumgead, is new, I think it's fair to say, at debate in your Lordship's House. And it emanates, of course, as he said, from a report produced by the Howard League. There are 2 points in what the noble Lord said that I would just like to present in my own way, if you like. The first relates to the action plan. The action plan actually has been excellent in many ways. It has achieved a great deal. But as I said at second reading, the difficulty with the action plan is that there is a number of people, a large number, nobody can put a figure on it, but consensually there is an idea that it is several hundreds, maybe nearly 1,000 people who are the hard cases left after the action plan has done the work it's been doing and has resolved the issues in relation to the, if you like, the low-hanging fruit. And we're left with several hundred people for whom I think it is clear the action plan is never going to be a solution. And if there is no other way out for them than the action plan, then effectively the government is saying that they will stay in jail until they die. Because what else is there? There is no other route out. But the noble and learned Lord has presented a proposal which would help. Now, he says the parole board would set a date 2 years after the process would be that the prisoner applies for parole, is refused a parole, but then the parole board would at that point be obliged to set a date up to 2 years later on which the prisoner will be released. And it could be represented, and this is the second point I want to make, it could be represented that this is effectively an automatic release that follows 2 years after they have failed to achieve release. But that is not the wording of the amendment, and I draw noble Lord's attention to the wording of the amendment in subsection 5, 6b, where it says the parole board may issue such directions to facilitate the prisoner's release, having set the date, may issue such directions to facilitate the prisoner's release at the specified future date as it considers necessary, having regard to its duty to protect the public. This is not a reckless and automatic release that follows without any effort on anybody's part from the decision to refuse parole. I think the essential idea is that the machinery of the prison service, the probation service, should be brought together, energized under the direction of the parole board to provide those tailored services, that tailored support, the education, the courses, the other measures that are necessary in order to ensure that that person is safe to be released. That is the objective here. Remember, many of the people who are in that group who will not be released through the action plan Many of them are in that group because they have ceased to engage with the system. Having been through the effort to achieve parole in the past and having suffered the severe psychological blow that can arise from having been refused and knocked back, there are many of them who simply won't go through that again. But if you could offer them a date, if you could say to them, here is hope, in 2 years, if you do these things, then perhaps we can get that engagement. Perhaps those people for whom otherwise there is no exit could be engaged and brought to be released with the approval of the parole board and with the support they need to get them to that place. And if that support turns out to be expensive and difficult and require a superhuman effort on the part of the prison service and the probation service and the other organs of the state and the Ministry of Justice, if it is expensive and difficult to provide, is that not the least we owe them now? So that is why I would say that I really hope that noble lords will be able to support the amendment in the name of the noble and learned Lord, and that the government will be able to relent. It might need some work in detail, but the principle behind it is something that I hope the whole House will be able to support. There are also amendments, if I turn to them briefly in this group, in the name of the noble Lord, Lord Blunkett, which relate to the parallel and in some senses almost deeper scandal of DPP prisoners. The only difference, noble lords will be aware, between DPP prisoners and IPP prisoners essentially is that DPP prisoners were sentenced when they were under 18. So these are people who were sentenced when they were under 18 who are still in prison. And they should not be. Almost certainly they should not be. But they are. And the amendments in the name of the noble Lord, Lord Blunkett, deserve support. And finally, I would like to come, and here I feel like this is very much an anticlimax, I would like to come to my own amendment, Amendment 109, which by comparison with those put forward by the noble Lord, Lord Woodley, and the noble and learned Lord Cumgede, is almost bloodless in its technical insignificance. It is a very, very modest proposal indeed. It is entirely administrative, and I'm very much hoping that the noble Lord the Minister will support it. It is what it would allow IPP prisoners who are in the community already serving a licence. It would allow them annually to apply to the parole board for the discharge of that licence. Now, in the Victims and Prisoners Bill, we reduced the statutory period of the licence dramatically, and we made it easier for people to be discharged. And hundreds of prisoners have had their licence terminated as a result of that. It's been the most significant step in the removing the scandal of IPP prisoners made so far. But there are these administrative difficulties that if you miss out on your discharge, you have to wait another whole 2 years before you can be considered again. And what I am simply doing here is introducing the idea that you could apply, and I would expect nobody would do this unless they were supported by their probation officer. You can apply after a year, not after 2 years. You can apply after a year to have your licence discharged. There is no threat to the public in this. Remember, these people are already living in the community. All that the amendment does is give them permission to apply for something. The decision whether to discharge their licence, not to release them from jail because they're in the community already, the decision to discharge their licence finally would still rest with the parole board. So there is no risk to the public at all in doing this. It is a modest administrative change that will help some, not many, but help some prisoners get rid of the stigma of this sentence sooner and resume their lives in the community as free subjects.